I mean, can you imagine driving like this? Like, that's just absolutely crazy. We just made a video detailing Group B rallying, and it's absolutely awesome. There are some amazing cars and even better shots that I wanted to react to and give you my opinion on as a professional racing driver. Look at the crowd. Insane. I mean, these spectators are just absolutely crazy. You couldn't do that nowadays. Now, I don't think that this footage was actually taken while he was doing the stage, but look at the crowds. That's the biggest thing. Like, the cars are absolutely amazing, but these spectators are just a bit crazy. Nice bit of heel and toe there, and you can see him getting on and off the throttle to keep the turbo spooling up. That way you have more power when you actually get back on the throttle, even at the lower RPM, because you're keeping it going. You're trying to get those RPMs going. This Audi, like, it looks like a lot of fun to drive, and you can see the engine, something on the engine braking there, but it looks so heavy, and you can see the car having a couple of moments throughout the corner. It slides, it understeers, it oversteers, it understeers, and it looks like an absolute brute to drive. This onboard footage is pretty interesting. You can see that these cars look like so difficult to drive. No power steering. The driver looks like the wheels are a little bit far away there, but you can see it's just like, they're absolute brutes, absolute monsters to drive there. I've driven some race cars from the 80s, and they are a completely different world to what we have 50 years later. The steering's so much heavier, the tyre technology isn't as good, the cars are much more difficult to drive, they're much more difficult to keep in that perfect window where the car's just rotating and sliding the perfect amount through each corner. And so I can't imagine what these things were like with all that power, with how light the chassis were, probably flexing as well on these difficult terrain with the spectators. It just absolutely blows my mind that the talent that these drivers had to even keep these monsters on the stage. So here we have a bit of jumping footage. Again, just mind-blowing, right? These big heavy cars, they're difficult to control. It's like before the jump, it's really important obviously that you've got the car set up and going in the direction that you want it to go, because obviously when you take off, you can't steer or slow the car down. And the other thing that you've got to consider here is that some of the cars weren't particularly well balanced. So you can see the Peugeot, for example, doing a nosedive. The Audi actually looks pretty well balanced, even though it was so heavy. But when you take off like that, you don't want to nosedive in the car, because obviously you'll break something when you land. Here we have some footage from a helicopter. I think absolutely fantastic. But again, look at the crowds. I just... You know, being a modern racer and with all the safety that we have, and for good reason, it just blows my mind that this was legal or possible, that the spectators even did it. Like, how far have we come in the last 50 years that no one that I know would do this now, and we're all completely shocked by it. But 50 years ago, you've got thousands of people doing this on the side of a rally stage, risking their lives. The Lancia there, but look at how close they're getting to the crowds. Now, I really want to focus on the cars and the rallying, but you can't get away from the fact that the spectators are crazy. And imagine what it's like from the driver's perspective as well. I'm sure they would have wanted the stages to be completely human-free, but you've got these guys. I mean, it must affect your vision when the spectators are stood on the edge there of the stage. You're not going to be able to look around the corner. It would almost be like driving on a street circuit where the barriers are quite tall. You can't look around the corner, which makes everything much, much more difficult. Whereas if those spectators weren't there, you'd be able to see through the corner, pick out your racing line, get on the throttle in the right spot. But these spectators are not only risking their lives, but making it much, much more difficult as well for the drivers. You can hear the turbo there on the Quattro, absolutely amazing. They just look heavy cars though, don't they? They don't look quite as nimble as today's rally cars.
There is a point where you have to drive thinking like, you know, they are part of the game. You try to, you know, to consider that they are like trees and you don't want to hit trees or anything. I mean, you know, it's difficult.
That's showing you how the driver is trying to understand or get through the dangers of driving with the spectators so close. But they knew the risks, the spectators and the drivers, but obviously it makes it no less horrific if there was an accident. But from the driver's perspective, yeah, it must have been a very, very difficult thing to deal with, because you are getting within millimeters, within inches of these human lives, and it's obviously incredibly dangerous. Tell you what, these cars don't sound like modern cars, do they? Amazing. Four-wheel drive system there, working wonders. Listen to it roar as it goes away. On the Metro, 6 off 4. So raspy. Now, I think these things were, space framed with fiberglass bodies, so they were super light. But I love the kind of boxy shapes of them. It's so beautiful to look at in that kind of aggressive way. Lancia here, one of my childhood hero cars. Absolutely amazing. And the 205, at this era of cars, the short wheelbase there meant it was really good on the rallies, because the shorter the wheelbase, the more nimble the car is. The longer the wheelbase, the more stable it is at speed, but the less nimble it is. Oof. That footage is just amazing. It still blows my mind, these rally drivers, that they fully committed, no runoff areas, dangerous cars. RS200. Really nice car. Bit of backfiring there. Look at the wing on the Peugeot. And a lot of that is to reduce the lift rather than add downforce. It's to reduce the lift on the rear of the car. Oh, this is a classic. The Renault 5. Love that colour scheme as well. But all the cars have just got that look where they're squat, wide, purposeful. Purposeful is the word. Like, they're there to do the job, be fast and be absolutely exhilarating. This is why it was the golden age of rallying. Just look at the cars. They are monsters. Such a cool era of motorsport. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out this other video that we made about Group B rallying, or take a look at this other video which we think you'll love. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.